Hey, what's up guys? This is Anthony from Anthony's Customs, and for this review, we are looking at the Storm Collectibles Injustice Gods Among Us ARES. This is one of the ones I've been most looking forward to because despite the lack of originality and creativity involved in creating ARES as a DC character, he's one of the coolest looking characters ever of all time, I think. And even though some of the Injustice designs may not be as widely popular as their comic book counterparts, I think it's hard to say that this is not a good look for ARES. It's essentially just a slightly different armor set than what we're used to. So it's very hard to screw that up, and he looks great as far as I'm concerned. I don't think anybody doesn't like this design. I checked, in fact, and nobody doesn't like it. So very good looking figure. Did they articulate it well? What kind of accessories? That kind of stuff. So let's go ahead and get it off the stand and take a closer look. Alrighty, this guy stands just about, let's say to the top of his head, about 21 centimeters, and then we'll go up to like 22 and a half just to get to the very top of his hat, the frilly part, which is definitely the official term for it. And that's going to be about 8 1/4 to the top of his head and closer to 9 to the very, very top. And before we get into the meat and taters of the review, let's do a question of the day. Are you a fan overall of the redesigns for Injustice, or do you think that they went a little bit over the top for most of the characters? I've heard both. I'm curious which camp you guys fall in. For the most part, I'd say I think they went a bit over the top, though there are a few designs which I just love. And I hope that Storm continues to make the Injustice characters, or Injustice-based figures, because I do like some of the designs a whole bunch. Like a lot, although I think Flash is probably the worst redesign ever. Anyway, okay, let's go ahead and talk about the review on this guy. Let's talk about the figure, not the review. I haven't filmed it yet. Aesthetically speaking, Storm made this guy clean. It's so clean. It's mostly because it's a basic design. Like, there's not a whole lot there. It's just armor plate with dry brushing, but there is a little bit of other paint work in there. If you look at the chest, which is fairly obvious, we do have the silver on top of this kind of bluish, grayish, greenish gunmetal. It's just an off gray color. Hopefully that shows up on camera, but the silver line work is very clean everywhere you can find it. The shoulder pad, the chest, all the way down the arm up here. The little studs in the suit, those are all clean. The silver parts here, that's clean. The black to greenish, bluish, grayish transition, wherever that is very clean. If you look at the neck area, you can see even in there, the dry brush is applied properly so that it hits the same pieces on the different sides of the body at the same spots. It's just so well executed. Even if you look at the helmet, there is dry brushing, there is some silver paint, but it's all applied purposefully. It looks so good. Even the horns, you see a little bit more dry brushing at the top than at the base. Same thing on this side. This guy is clean, and it's also very hard to see most of the articulation, which is a really good thing. Anytime you can hide it, that's great. Obviously, you can see the elbows, and I'll be honest, there isn't all the articulation you would be expecting, so they hid it by not putting it there. But still, it's a very, very well executed figure from an aesthetic perspective. Even if you go around to the back where you look at his skirt, you can see the greenish, grayish, bluish gunmetal up here, and then the black parts in between, and then just a little bit of a silver dry brush to give it some texture. Same thing for the chain, which is just rubber or soft plastic. And the studs are painted again, and then more of the line work. It's all very well executed. It's basic, don't get me wrong. It's not like it's the craziest design ever, craziest paint job ever, but what they did was just executed very well, and that's all it takes in most cases to make a figure look good. And I'll say on top of that, I didn't really mention this, there is dry brush on top of the grayish, bluish, greenish gunmetal also, which makes it pop just right. So it's not just the dark spots, some of the light spots have it too, like across the chest, on the thighs. Very aesthetically pleasing. I'm very, very pleased with the look of this guy. One other thing there's a few other things we want to talk about for the aesthetic. One issue we have here is that they fell into the trap of we made the helmet removable to make the faces interchangeable, which is fine. That's a perfectly valid strategy, and it's a really nice sculpt in there. And you can see, hopefully, that they painted the eyes. Like, it looks a little cross-eyed right now. That's mostly shadows. Don't worry about that. It actually is just shadows. It's not cross-eyed in real life, for mine. Anyway, but they did a really good job painting those eyes. I will say, though, that because they had to make the head fit in here, it's a little bit narrow looking. You won't notice it probably with the helmet on, of course, but if you wanted, like if you look really close, his head does look a little skinny. I don't know if you're gonna be able to see it on camera. It's a thing. It's a very tiny issue, obviously, no pun intended, that he has a skinny head, because the helmet will be hiding that most of the time. You wouldn't probably display him like this. But it's worth noting because you might see that his eyes look a little narrower than they probably should. But again, with the helmet on, you're not gonna have that problem, so don't worry about it too much. Okay, then the last thing I want to talk about, aesthetically speaking, we'll talk about the helmet more in a little bit, is the cape. It's a very strange material. Like, my hands aren't rough at all, but the cloth sticks to me anywhere that there's any sort of imperfection in my skin. It's a very strange, weird felt. It's not felty. I don't even know what it is. It's some kind of weird blend that it looks like a stocking almost. Like, it's a weird soft material. It's not great for a cape. It's not gonna matter a whole bunch because it's just a black piece of cloth. But it's a little weird that they used that. And it's also 2-ply, so it's basically like a sack. I don't know how well you're gonna be able to see since it's solid black. But it's stitched around the edges where the wiring is, which we'll talk about in a second. But it is 2-ply, so it's very thick looking. And it's just not the best looking cape we've seen. It's very strange, but we do get wiring at the top here where it hangs out the back. And then there's another wire that shoots down around the bottom, all the way around. And the wire does tuck in to the suit. So if you want to hold it up, like, it's not that stiff of a wire, but if you want to hold it up, you can do that. So they did that right. That's a good thing. Anytime you're going to wire a cape, it needs to have a fixed point. If it's just going to droop, it won't work. So that's a good thing. Mine did come busted though. The wire is not connected right here. Hopefully that's not the case for everybody. There's a limp spot right there, so hopefully that's not the way they made it. That would be a bummer. But it's nice. Like, the wire's good. It's tucked in. It's actually connected up into the shoulders, so that's good. But the cape is not the best looking cape we've ever seen. It's very chunky and the material's a little bit weird. Minor issues, but still, they are issues. Okay, so let's go ahead and move on. The aesthetic rating on this guy is gonna get an 8 out of 10. It looks gorgeous. The cape does pull it back as far as I'm concerned. It's a good enough cape. It won't bother a lot of people, but the fact that it's 2-ply and nothing holding it together, it ends up looking like a sack, like a Santa sack, rather than a cape. So, not perfection, but it is a really good looking figure. Okay, as far as the accessories go, you already saw the neutral face that comes on him in the package. Then we get one where he's showing his teeth, and then when we get one where he's yelling. The eyes are painted excellently. I cannot talk. The eyes are painted excellently on both of those, so that's pretty cool. As far as hands go, we get the 2 fist hands that come on him in the package, 2 gripping hands for his weapons, and then 2 different sets of style pose hands. That's all pretty good. Then we do get his giant sword and giant axe, and those are both gorgeous. The metallics on there are very nice and shiny. They almost have like a gloss look to them. Very cool. I love the dry brushing on the goldish bronzy bits, coppery bits. That's very cool. They did post a photo, or showed photos. Yeah, it's not on the box, so I don't know where those... I saw the photo somewhere, but it was him standing there with a bunch of swords floating around him, which I guess is like a thing that happens in the game. You can't do that. I don't know if there's like a special edition that has a whole bunch of extra swords. I kind of don't think so. But I'll post the photo so you can see what I'm talking about. I don't know what the story is on that, but you can't do that. So if you're buying it based on that alone, don't. But the accessories that are here are awesome, and I'm gonna give it an 8 out of 10. 3 different faces, a bunch of hands, and 2 giant weapons. I'll take it. That's very cool. And the good thing about the sword and the axe is they don't weigh anything. They're made very nice and light, so he can hold them no problem. I like that a whole bunch. So that's good. Okay, let's go ahead and talk about the articulation. We're gonna remove his helmet. Oh, that's the other thing I wanted to mention about the helmet. Because of the fact that they made the head extra narrow to accommodate the helmet, it is very loose on his head, so it gets a little bit annoying to adjust it. If you're gonna take like a close-up and you need to see his eyes perfectly or something, it just bobbles around on the head a little bit and it's kind of a nuisance. But a little bit of sticky tack in there will solve that. Okay, so we have the standard long ball peg neck for this guy, so it goes down into the body and you can lean it around, and then you have the ball peg at the top, of course. So you'll be able to pose the head around a little bit, but of course once you put this on there, you lose a lot of that range just because of the thickness, the girth of the helmet, so that's to be expected. No problem there. Shoulder pads are connected to the torso. So yes, the arms have the big ball peg that goes into the body that connects into the skeleton, so you can move the whole arm around, and it works. There's no problem there. It does work, but of course you do have armor here, which is flexible, but it's still there. So you're gonna have some limitations. Raising up to the side is not one of them. They did a really good job with that. Of course, rotating this way, it works well enough. The way the armor is connected to the body, it flexes enough that you can pose him pretty well without things getting in the way. And it's soft enough material that it's all right. It's surprisingly versatile. You're not going to have too much of an issue. Raising the arm all the way up, it still works pretty well. I mean, there's enough flex in that soft shoulder pad that for a guy wearing heavy armor, he poses particularly well. I'm very pleased with that. You do get your bicep swivel right there, standard bicep swivel, double jointed elbow. Let's see what kind of range we get on that. Better than 90. I like it. I think they did, like, look at that. He's got full armor and you're moving the arms around like there's nothing. I love that. It's very good. For the wrists, it's your standard ball hinge wrist, which is fine. It pops off a little bit easy, maybe, but it's not like it's loose, so that's fine. And the joint itself is fine. You're not gonna get a ton of range out of there. You can see once the hand is on the peg, there's not a whole lot of a gap there to get much range. So that's probably okay, considering if it was too much, you might have issues with the weapons, even though they don't weigh that much. So could be better in the wrist, but it's not bad. Now here's the thing, in the torso, it's hard for me to say if they have the standard mid-torso ball peg. I do feel like they do. It does feel like it's in there. I mean, you can see it moving. I don't think I'm accidentally moving it down here. It feels like it's moving up here, so that's good. And it's technically there, and it does allow him to lean back some and to lean forward some. But as you can see, all of the chest armor, this whole piece is one piece, or at least multiple pieces glued together. So as you lean him back, you can see the black skin of the neck sliding back in the suit, which is fine. But as you bring him forward, the suit kind of pokes into his neck, into his chin a little bit. So it does work. You do get the range, but just a little bit, and also the suit is going to get in the way some, especially when that helmet's on. Now, technically, you can lean him side to side and rotate him at that joint as well, but it's going to be tricky because that's happening underneath the suit of armor, so you're really just moving the neck and the arms. The armor and this black piece in here, which is actually still just armor, that's all staying fixed. It's very flexible, but it's not actually moving with the articulation. So that upper joint is technically there. It does work, but it's going to be very limited. Now we do have the loose pieces down here. Thank God they didn't connect them to the crotch piece. We have seen that in the past on the Mortal Kombat figures, that the diaper is connected to the mid-torso stuff. That's not a great idea for range of motion. Luckily, this guy, it's a totally separate piece. So you get full rotation underneath this whole diaper piece in the legs, full rotation separate from the upper armor. So that's gonna be, it's free. I mean, there's no problem there. You can rotate it all the way around if you wanted to. So that's a very good thing. Bringing the hips forward, there's a little bit of looseness, but you can get almost horizontal, so that's pretty good. The looseness happens somewhere in here. It's not floppy, but it's a little bit loose. That might vary from figure to figure. Going back, almost horizontal again, so that's really good. No problems there. Going out to the side, you do get a little bit of binding. I think that's just the leg binding on the diaper itself right in here. So you might be able to play with that and get a little bit better range. But I think for Ares, that's probably enough. I don't think he's known for doing the splits or super high kicks to the side. So I think that'll do. I think that's just fine. And no looseness there. It's a little bit of squeakage, some squeakage, but not the bad kind, so that's all right. Thigh swivel is not the best in the world, but it does work. Now for the knees, not the best looking thing based on the armor design. This is not great, this fork that sticks off the front, but the knee itself gives you plenty of range. Look at that, that's a good knee bend. That's like as far as you could expect it to go. And it's not real gappy. I don't like that this, I mean, I know it wouldn't technically go up like that, but maybe in the game they do something to make it look better. I don't know, but I don't like this big flat piece of stuff here. But that's not the figure's fault, that's just me brainstorming. Like if that was connected to the knee more, it would be better. But again, that doesn't count, so just ignore that. If you guys know from the game, I don't remember if they did something about that. Like when he bends his knee, does it look weird? Okay, anyway, let's go on to the ankle. It's a ball hinge ankle, pretty standard. Goes all the way forward, like that's more than enough. Almost a flat line across the top, so he could stand, what's the ballet term? On point? Is that, I don't know. and then you could go back. I don't know ballet at all. I was gonna make a joke about Ares doing ballet, but I failed. And then you can bring the leg the foot pretty far forward. It's not as far as I'd like, but it's better than most of the Storm figures, and they made the boot armor soft, so it doesn't get in the way. They're still just not cutting away enough material on the inside, on the hard plastic, the PVC shin. They're not cutting away enough to let the foot come far enough forward, but it'll get the job done going forward. That's fine. Toe hinge is very far back in the foot. It's not great looking, so again, toe hinges are just a discounted thing as far as I'm concerned from this line. They almost never look good, they almost never work. It's almost true for every figure line ever. Toe hinges just aren't worth the investment as far as I'm concerned, unless it's a very specific instance. Then we do get an ankle rocker though, which is at a little bit of an angle, but it'll get the job done. If you need to put his leg out to the side for like a dynamic stance or something, you can do that. So that's pretty good. So ultimately, for the articulation, after all of that is said and done, I think for a guy in a heavy suit of armor that looks all bulky and chunky like this, Storm really did a good job. It's like they've implemented everything they've learned across the various licenses that they have and put it into this figure. Would I prefer there be a cut here so that his upper torso works much better? Yes, I would prefer that. But otherwise, they did a pretty damn good job, especially in the shoulder region. They made the armor so soft that it doesn't really matter what they did. It works no matter what, and I'm very pleased with that. So I'm going to give this guy an articulation rating of 8 out of 10. It is bolstered by the fact that it's heavy armor, and it works. If this was like a naked dude, it would need to be a lot better to get an 8. But given that it's Ares and not Spider-Man or somebody that's naked, like I said, this is perfectly acceptable in every way. I'm very pleased with it. So this is a strong release, like very strong. I'm gonna have to give it a final verdict. I'm gonna go 9 out of 10. This is a really nice release. I love the aesthetic. I love that it's functional as far as articulation goes. Honestly, the biggest downside I have is the cape. I don't like the material. I don't like the fact that it's 2-ply, and as you can see, just the way it's hanging right now, that's not like a curve and that's giving the thickness. That's the 2 different plies poofing apart. So I love that it's a nice thick wire that's connected in at the top, but the 2-ply and the type of cloth is weird to me. I don't care for that. I can see a lot of people, I know there's a lot of people out there who make custom capes. I don't really do cloth work, but I could see a lot of people wanting a new cape for this guy and it being a damn near perfect figure. So yeah, 9 out of 10. I definitely recommend it if you're into DC, if you're into Storm, if you're into Injustice, if you're into just cool looking armored figures. Like, this is definitely the way to go. It's one of their better releases for sure, as far as I'm concerned, and I don't really care about Ares. It's just a cool design. So I'm not biased, I'm just honest, and it's great and objective for the most part, and it's great. Very good release. Thanks for watching, guys. Let me know what you thought about the figure. Let me know what you thought about the review by giving it a thumbs up or a thumbs down, whichever one you prefer. If you haven't subscribed, you might want to. I have new videos almost every single day and thousands already on the channel, so make sure you come back for all of that. And in the meantime, keep collecting.